Welcome back, DeepVisus Explorers, to Where Vision Meets Depth. Today, we delve into the intricate world of neural network representations, inspired by how our own brains perceive the world. In this episode, our journey is guided by the work titled, How to Represent Part-Whole Hierarchies in a Neural Network, published by Geoffrey Hinton in 2021. Have you ever wondered how a neural network, a sophisticated computer system, can understand an image the way you do, recognizing that a nose is part of a face, and a face is part of a person? This seemingly simple ability to parse an image into a part-whole hierarchy is a core challenge for artificial intelligence, especially when that hierarchy has a unique structure for every single image. That's the central question Hinton's paper, which introduces an imaginary system called GLOM, attempts to answer. Let's break down this fascinating idea. Imagine, for a moment, that an image isn't just a flat collection of pixels, but a scene composed of interconnected objects, which are themselves made of parts, and those parts of subparts. This is a part-whole hierarchy. Humans effortlessly build these mental parse trees when they look at a visual scene. But for a neural network, which has a fixed architecture, dynamically creating such a flexible, image-specific structure has been a major hurdle. Previous attempts to tackle this problem often involved capsules, which are groups of neurons dedicated to representing specific types of parts in particular image regions. The idea was to activate a subset of these pre-existing capsules and their connections to form a parse tree. However, this approach faced limitations, particularly in scaling to larger datasets and in gracefully handling variations or ambiguities in parts. GLOM proposes a radically different approach. Instead of pre-allocating neurons to specific parts, it uses islands of identical vectors to represent the nodes in the parse tree. Think of it like this: for a given image, all the locations that belong to a particular part, say, a nose, will converge on nearly identical numerical representations, or vectors, at a specific level within the network. These identical vectors form an island. Higher levels of the hierarchy will then form larger islands, representing wholes, like a face, that encompass multiple part-level islands. The GLOM architecture itself is composed of many columns, all using the same internal weights. These are essentially the learned parameters of the network. Each column is a stack of local autoencoders. An autoencoder is a neural network that learns to encode information into a lower dimensional representation and then decode it back to the original. In GLOM, these autoencoders transform information between different levels of representation within a column, corresponding to levels in the part-whole hierarchy. So, one column might learn to represent a nostril at a lower level, then a nose at a slightly higher level, then a face, and finally a person. Now, how do these islands of identical vectors form? The magic happens through a continuous update process. At each discrete time step, and within each column, the embedding vector, the numerical representation, at a given level is updated. This update is a weighted average of 4 key contributions. 1. A prediction from the bottom-up neural network, based on the embedding at the level below. 2. A prediction from the top-down neural network, based on the embedding at the level above. 3. The embedding vector from the previous time step. 4. An attention-weighted average of the embeddings at the same level in nearby columns. This last point is crucial. The inter-column interactions, which are simpler than the within-column interactions, are designed to make embedding vectors at the same level in nearby locations regress towards each other if they are similar. This creates local echo chambers where like-minded embeddings cluster together, ultimately forming those islands of identical vectors. For a static image, these embeddings settle down over time, resulting in distinct islands of nearly identical vectors. The brilliance here is that GLOM doesn't need to dynamically allocate new neurons for each node in a parse tree, nor does it need to pre-allocate neurons for every conceivable part. Instead, it uses the same activity vector across all locations belonging to a specific node, and the relationships, ancestor, descendant, are learned by the bottom-up and top-down neural networks. The system is trained end-to-end, meaning it learns from input to output, often by trying to reconstruct images with missing regions. To further encourage the formation of these islands, the training also includes regularizers that promote agreement between the new embedding and the bottom-up and top-down predictions. This agreement helps solidify the local islands. GLOM also draws inspiration from several other fields. From a biological analogy, it posits that just as every cell in the body contains a copy of the whole genome, each location in an image in GLOM has a complete embedding vector similar to a cell's gene expression intensities. Objects are like organs, collections of locations with similar high-level embedding vectors. A mathematical analogy comes from the Kolmogorov-Arnold superposition theorem, which suggests that complex multi-argument functions can be broken down into simpler single-argument functions and sums. In GLOM, this translates to the idea that simply averaging encoded information from different locations, especially an attention-weighted local average, might be sufficient for interactions between locations. Finally, GLOM builds upon recent work in neural fields, which are neural networks that can represent the value of a variable, like depth or intensity, at any point in an image by taking a location as an input. In GLOM, this is extended hierarchically, where a scene-level neural network, given an image location, can predict the appropriate object vector for that location, and so on down to parts. This allows a single top-down network acting on a face vector to predict a nose vector in some locations and a mouth vector in others. In essence, GLOM offers a novel way for neural networks to represent complex part-whole hierarchies within images without needing to explicitly allocate dedicated neural hardware. It leverages the power of vector similarity to form dynamic clusters, allowing for flexible and interpretable representations. So, to answer our central question, how can a neural network with a fixed architecture parse an image into a part-whole hierarchy that has a different structure for each image? GLOM proposes to achieve this by using islands of identical vectors to represent the nodes in the parse tree. This means that instead of rigid, predefined structures, the network learns to dynamically group image locations into coherent parts and wholes based on the similarity of their high-dimensional embedding vectors, which are constantly being refined through bottom-up, top-down, and lateral interactions. This allows the network to effectively parse each image by forming these emergent, dynamic islands of shared representation. As we close this chapter, remember that the quest for true intelligence, whether biological or artificial, is an unending symphony of discovery. Join us next time on DeepVisus as we tune into another frequency of the brain, mind, and intelligence, unraveling the mysteries that shape our understanding of thought itself.